Kelly Court from ACOS, and I just spent the afternoon here with a group of really good people from a range of stakeholders talking about what's the end game when it comes to determining network revenue. And I found it a really useful conversation because I think that one of the things we're often stuck in the past of how networks previously determined revenue.
So customer engagement is something that people have been talking about a huge amount in the last few years in the context of how networks make decisions about their business. In the past, networks have engaged directly with the regulator to determine the services they deliver, the investments they make, and ultimately how much that costs consumers. There's a real recognition now that networks need to engage much more directly with all their different customer groups and stakeholders and the community to work out what those service levels are, what the new things they need to do are, how much money they'll spend and what it will cost. And the process and the project that Mark's running is really about thinking about how that can work. And we're here today to talk about what the end game is and the ultimate objective. From my perspective, from Energy Consumers Australia, we really think that networks should get to the point where customer engagement is just part of their business as usual decision making.
Hello, my name's Mark Renning and I represent the Energy Users Association of Australia. That's an organisation of medium and large energy users. I'm also a member of the AER's Consumer Challenge panel. Today's discussion was absolutely fascinating and necessary. What we see from my constituency is a very important role of consumer engagement to involve consumers, whether they be residential, commercial, industrial, large consumers, in the process of understanding how networks operate.
It needs to be broadened. We need to be thinking about community in a broader way than just consumers. I represent local government. Local government is obviously an important community representative.
We're looking at the forum United Communities conducted with you today on consumer engagement and network businesses and trying to get a sense of where we're going. Mm-hmm. And so we asked, what's the end game? What did you come up with?
Well, it was actually quite a good discussion about what the end game was, and we were very clear in saying that the end game wasn't a time-bound thing and it wasn't a firm model. It was more about when the dust settles and when we reach some sort of a steady state, what's going to look like. And we asked people to come back with characteristics. So rather than actually defining what are some of the characteristics, and there were some really good themes that came through, some common themes. Transparency was one. Yep. Whatever you get to, it has to be transparent. Another one was whatever you get to, it has to be representative. It has to involve consumers, not just consumer advocates, but actual consumers. So real consumers need to be involved. Has to allow for innovation. You can't have something that will stifle innovation because we're in an industry that is innovating. Has to be tailored, so it can't be a one size fits all. Here it is. It's got to have tailoring. It's got to be, but it's also got to be well enough defined that people know what they're actually trying to do. But what was interesting was there was some discussion about agreement and negotiate and where that fits in, and that was one area where maybe there wasn't full agreement, no pun intended, between all the parties, but there was a recognition that the current model is probably not where it needs to sit. So we don't want to sit in the informed consult, but whether or not we want to go all the way to the other end of the spectrum to the empowerment one is still up for debate. But I think it was definitely not where we're not going to stay where we are.
Sure.
So that's sort of what I felt, and I think that's good. I think that there was a general consensus about where we want to head.
Yeah, certainly I've got a strong sense that collaboration is very much the new black, if we can use that sort of language. And this is networks, retailers, regulators, consumer groups all saying, look, collaboration is the way forward.
And there's mutual benefit from collaborating.
And recognising that there's collaboration moving forward, but that we're not quite sure we're moving to because the rapid change in energy markets.
Correct. So there's some further work involved to sort of think about it.
Yeah. So perhaps can we just look at what were the outcomes of the day?
Yeah.
So where did we end up?
I think we ended up with some very clear consensus that we're on a journey and we're not there yet. And so, we're not at the end game yet, but, what that end game looks like, we're not sure, but we're not there yet. Very much that there needs to be further resources provided to increase the level of consumer engagement, that there's, that the only direction is up in terms of the level of consumer engagement. very much that that is for mutual benefit, that it actually should be just part of business as usual of the networks, that, you know, it's not something that should just be done because it has to be done. It's not a ticker box exercise. There's actually a real benefit underneath doing it, and that benefit will be on both sides of the fence, customers and networks. Very much consensus that retailers need to be actively involved in the process. Very much consensus that the regulator needs to be involved throughout the process.
Yes.
That, you know, it's not a stop-start. It's not get involved at the beginning, then get involved at the end. It's about they have to be involved for the whole journey. But then there were some discussions about cultural shift. You know, does that require cultural shift for the networks? Probably yes. Does that require cultural shift for the regulators? Probably yes.
Does it require cultural shift for community groups?
Correct.
Definitely yes.
You know, so there is a cultural shift required. There was also a big discussion about resourcing. There are inadequate resources at the moment, and that, you know, there is a need for more resources and better resources, those sorts of things. So that was something that also came through.
But unequivocally, the view that resources given to consumer advocacy and consumer groups is very cost effective.
Yes,
So that
and there's
big
mutual
benefits
benefit. There's mutual benefit.
for small costs.
That's the point. But the point here is that the benefits flow across the board. That there's benefits for consumers, benefits for businesses, and so it's mutual benefit. That's the whole point. It's not one party benefits and the other party pays. In fact, the whole point here is that higher engagement, stronger engagement, more engagement actually is for mutual benefit. And I think that's the win-win situation that happens. And that, you know, the cost is tiny relative to the benefit. We didn't quantify it today. We're not about to quantify it today, but we all intuitively just knew that, you know, the cost of actual more engagement is not going to be huge relative to the benefits.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.